Hello. Welcome to today's session of Selling the Couch. I hope you're doing awesome and having an incredible day. So, just a heads up, this will be the last podcast episode for about a month. I'm going to take the next month just to get ahead of podcast episodes and take some rest and time to recharge and all of those things. But today's podcast session is guided by a question that I get a lot recently, which is, Mel, how in the world do I optimize my LinkedIn profile? Before we get too much into that, also just a heads up, I've actually never done this format before, but if you're listening to this podcast as an audio podcast, you're definitely going to get a ton of value from it, but it may actually be more helpful to watch this on YouTube. So you can just find me, just search for my name. And the reason is because I'm actually doing like an over-the-shoulder video as I'm recording this. So you'll actually see some of the stuff that we're doing on our LinkedIn profile and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. But this episode, as I mentioned, was guided by this question of colleagues asking, Mel, I'm curious about LinkedIn, but I don't quite know how to get my profile to be what it needs to be. I've been active on LinkedIn coming on 2.5 years now, and I literally started with, and I can even, as you're watching this on YouTube, I'll share, my stats, but I literally started with around 808 followers. I think this is not actually quite accurate. I think it was quite late. It was more like 600 something followers. And over the span of the 2.5 years, we've, steadily grown. As I record this, we're at 3,736 followers on LinkedIn. And over that just about 2.5 years, we've had about 567,238 views of our content. I have made 510 posts. In people engaging with our content is around 22,234. So we've had some really good growth, and I am by no stretch of the imagination an expert on LinkedIn, but I thought, let me just share kind of what has been helpful for us. And even as I created this episode, or was thinking through this episode, I did two things. One is I didn't want it to be too heavily scripted, because I wanted to just kind of share things in the moment. The other thing is I wanted to make this as evergreen as possible. So I'm going to focus less on quote unquote tactics that are working now, but more timeless things that I have found to be beneficial and helpful when it comes to LinkedIn. So what you're looking at right now is just my own LinkedIn profile. And again, you can just look for my name and find me on LinkedIn if I'd love to, connect with you. But the biggest piece of advice that I would share with you on LinkedIn or about LinkedIn is to see your LinkedIn profile as a landing page where folks who don't know about you can learn about the products and services that you offer. So see it as a landing page versus a sales page. So practically what that means is what I have found is ideally what you want to use LinkedIn is to build your email list, and the content that you create, you want to provide value, but ultimately the intent is to take the folks that resonate with your message on LinkedIn to an email list. And underlying this is this concept of rented versus owned real estate. And so I think as clinicians, one of the things we want to use these social media platforms as a way to, connect with others and for them to know about the good work that we're doing in the world. But ultimately, we want to take them into assets that we own, i.e. an email list. That just makes it, that way you're not at the whim of algorithms and a bunch of stuff like that. So, okay, so how I think about it, let's even start at the very top. So the very top, likely the two things that people will see is what we have seen is they look at this banner image right here and then they look at your profile picture. Sometimes it's the other way around, but usually what we have found is, banner image to profile picture. I actually had a friend who's a graphic designer create this. Before that, you can actually, if you're like, hey, I just want to get started, you can go to Canva and just look and do a quick search of LinkedIn banners, and there's a bunch of templates that'll come up for you that you can just swap your content, and honestly that's like a good place to start. So what I have found is as we were designing this image, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give off a vibe that I try to live in my life, but also communicate through STC, which is I wanted to, I try to be a friendly and kind person. So I wanted a picture that communicated that. And then the designer that we work with, Nashif, and he, was like, why don't you put like a psychologist here so people know who you are? And so it's like a very subtle thing. And the DM me for details, which is basically references this section right here. So we were trying to think of just like a phrase or something that communicates essentially what we do with STC, which is going from clinical to online income. And specifically, my area is podcasting and online course support for therapists. That's the stuff that I've lived and breathed now over the past decade. And so what we did is just a very simple text related to that. We also included some social proof, so that might be something to consider and think about. So if you've been featured in any sort of publications or anything like that, I think that can definitely give some social proof as well. And then the graphics themselves, what we really try to focus on was, something that was catchy. And so these aren't quite my brand colors in terms of like STC being, it's usually kind of reds and oranges and yellows and grays and stuff like that. But I thought it would be a nice little contrast because so many, it's just like a unique color combo what we did here with kind of the more, pinks and purples here as well. So that's kind of the banner image. And again, you can create that in Canva. So just go to Canva and search right here for LinkedIn banner image. And then you should have some really nice templates. In fact, that's what I would recommend just starting with when you're first on LinkedIn. I'm a big believer in this philosophy of get going, then get good, then get smart. And so in the first year with LinkedIn particularly, it's just all about getting going before you optimize too much here. Okay, so the second thing I just mentioned was some sort of a profile picture that I think can be extremely helpful. And what this is such a basic thing, but have an image of you that's actually smiling, because I just think people connect with the human side, especially now on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is definitely shifting from at least for me, traditionally the way that I thought about LinkedIn was, okay, this is just a place where I post job resumes and job updates and stuff like that. But LinkedIn now is its own social media platform. And so you want to have something that's kind of human and approachable. And in fact, if you kind of look very subtly, I'm literally wearing a hoodie with a shirt. And I went back and forth about whether that was too casual, especially because I'm have all these images in my head, this is what a psychologist should dress like, all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately we relied on something that was a little bit more casual because again, I just thought I wanted it to be about approachability. Now, what you can also do within Canva is, and I'll just show you this, if you go and let's just say you pop in one of your pictures, okay? So I'm just gonna actually pop in the picture that I used. Okay, so what you can do is you can go and click on the picture and then you can hit BG remover, and you have to have a premium account of Canva to do this, but it will take out the background and does a really good job of taking out the background for you. So see how the background got taken out? And so you can do all sorts of stuff like that for your LinkedIn image. And then you can also then go in and add another background image that may be, or background color that may be more aligned with your brand colors. So that's definitely what I do. Smiling face, remove the background, potentially add like a branded colored one there, and go from there. Okay. So those are the first two things, and to focus on. Now here is where I feel like this is really kind of the nitty gritty. So this little section right here, which you can edit just by clicking here, and you can change your name up. And I did a audio pronunciation, so you can actually record how to sound out your name, because a lot of folks get Varghese and they mispronounce it. And I thought the other thing is, just like from a human connection perspective, someone being able to hear your voice in a format, in a medium that is primarily text-based, I thought that could be a nice, unique way to stand out. And so you can then change your headline here. I've seen all sorts of like formulas. A common one is, helping whoever your ideal client is get, whatever the ideal result is by providing, and then insert, coaching services or through an online course, or, and then ending without the overwhelm or something like that, right? That's like a common one. I try to just be a little bit more, a little bit different of a format. So I did psychologist and proud girl dad because, I think for me personally is, obviously I have my professional identity, but my identity as a dad, and especially raising a daughter, that's extremely important to me. And I really wanted to connect also with parents who understand, or who are navigating that tension of balancing both career and parenting. And so that's kind of what I did. And then I did this little, the little line, and I just had podcaster and course creator since 2015. And so that was kind of a credibility thing for me. And so I wanted to just share, the stuff that I'm sharing is not just because I found out about this, podcasting and course creation like a couple of months ago, and I'm just sharing. It's more that I've kind of been living and breathing it for a while. And then what I did is I even shared a little bit more social proof as well. And I included emojis. So there's a website called Emojipedia that you can pretty much find any emoji that you need. So I literally copied and pasted some emojis from there. And so I just shared some of my podcasting stats. So we've had 1.8 million downloads. We're a top 0.5% global podcast. And then in my own course journey, we've had 242 plus students, and then we've had 327,000 in course sales. So, and then I just said helping therapists launch podcasts and courses. And then I put this last little part, sharing my journey, because again, my goal with LinkedIn is to connect and share helpful content. And I just thought that would be helpful. And then what I also, you can fill in some of this other stuff with education, and all of that stuff helps. So whatever you put in here ends up showing as a logo here. And the other most important section is down here, which is your website. And so LinkedIn allows you to add a link at the top of your profile that connects to anything that you want. So I have done just one website. So we have our course creator starter kit, which is our 7-day email course to validate an online course idea. We have that here, so it goes directly to the page. But I've also heard and seen folks do something like a link tree, which is basically a simple one link, but you get a whole bunch of stuff that you can put, the podcast and whatever, like schedule a call with me. I've gone back and forth on these, but I've generally found like one single call to action works really well versus like, giving people too many options. But I've also seen folks do this on Linktree. So in short, like I would experiment with one versus like doing like multiple ones and see, which one seems to resonate for you and for your audience. This section right here will always be private to you. So it just kind of tells you over the past 7 days how many people, like how your posts have done, how often you've shown up in search. So we've had 3,282 views of our content over the past 7 days, and we've had 428 profile views over the past 7 days. All right, so again, that'll be, and if you click the show all analytics, it'll show some more interesting stuff like how your impressions were, all of that stuff, and then you can also click through here and see kind of how things have done. So I don't try to focus too much on like 7 days. I try to always like extrapolate it out over many months, and then you kind of see like it's been pretty stable. So I don't get too wrapped up in the analytics because I've realized like trying to play that game, it's just asking for a lot of stress. What I try to do is just create helpful content. And what I'm actually trying to do is the content that is most resonating for folks. So the ones that have the most impressions or even the most click-through rates. Again, we use a scheduling software called Taplio. If you'd like to support the STC blog, you can go to sellingthecouch.com/Taplio. That's an affiliate link. But we use Taplio to schedule out all of our posts. So basically I have like a queue of posts that are ready to go out. The other thing I like about Taplio is there's got some really nice analytics. So you can say, for example, which posts had the most engagement. I don't really focus, to be honest, on views because that's I think a little too algorithmically driven. What I'm actually trying to focus on is engagement percentage. So which posts are people really resonating with. And then what I personally do is I create long form content from those short form posts, because then that allows me to speak more on that particular topic, but I also know it's a topic that's resonating for people. And for me, long form content is obviously the podcast. So that's another kind of side strategy or things to think about, is using like posts that you create on here to gather data and then creating longer form content in on other channels, whether it's a blog post or YouTube or a podcast or whatever it is. Okay, so now this brings us to this about section. There's been some conversation of having this section moved up further, and I don't know like where they are with that, but this section is definitely an interesting section in that it's a section that a lot of people will visit, and they will they're gonna want to get to know you and like hear and just like hear more about your journey. One of the most common mistakes that I see on LinkedIn profiles is they make this almost like a CV, which on LinkedIn, there's definitely, again, a shift from more academic and CV focused to more storytelling focused. And so personally for me, I would tell it like a story. And so this is kind of what I talked about my own journey, getting licensed in 2012 as a psychologist, working full-time doing therapy, testing, and supervision. And then, in 2015, how we got hit with a nor'easter, and I ended up having to cancel 21 fee-for-service therapy clients, and we were saving up for the 20% down payment on our home to avoid the PMI. And I talked about that. Then I talked about our daughter being born and 2 months premature, and how that shifted my own journey about career and business and what I wanted to prioritize. And so that story is basically captured here. Now, here's a little hack or a little tip that you can do. You can write, so think about your ideal follower on LinkedIn. So ideally it should be connected to the products and services that you offer, right? And so speak to them. And ideally what I found beneficial is, again, the level of self-disclosure will always vary between clinician to clinician. So whatever feels the most right and comfortable for you. But, I found connecting what your ideal profile visitor is going to connect with to your own story is like really beneficial. So personally, what you can do is you can write this is actually what I did. I wrote out a story and then I plugged it into I use ChatGPT, but you can use any of these LLM models. But you can say look at this story through the eyes of a seasoned copywriter and tweak it so that it's more powerful. And so that's kind of what I did. And I talked about the two products or the services that we offer. And then what I did is I ended up with, again, because I'm thinking of LinkedIn as a landing page and I want to give folks as many opportunities to connect with me to join our email list as possible. And so at the very end in the PS, I basically did 2 calls to actions to our free podcasting workshop and then to our free course creator starter kit. And so again, that takes our most interested folks, the folks that we've connected with, the folks that most resonate with our message, to an email list so that I'm not building an audience on LinkedIn. And then, if for some reason I get banned from LinkedIn or the algorithm changes and our posts aren't doing as well, I'm not reliant on that. So, okay, which basically brings us down here to our featured section. And so this is basically a section where you can quote unquote pin posts that you've created, any of that stuff. So you can actually, if you just go here, you can do feature on top of my profile. And so you can actually add that into here. And so what personally I would do is I would do at 3 is a good number. But all of them, I think what I would think is these are folks that are just getting to know you and how can I connect with them at a deeper level? So again, we have our course creator starter kit here. We have our free webinar for our podcasting workshop here. And then I have a link to the STC podcast here. Nachif was awesome and created this cool little banner, which basically kind of plays keeps that image going across all 3. I don't know how to do that. Yeah, and that is definitely not essential when you first get on LinkedIn, but it definitely gives them a more pro look. If you're I would say about 1.5 to 2 years on LinkedIn, this is something I would start to do because I just think it gives we're again thinking of it like a landing page, it gives a vibe. And so with each of these, you can do a little, so it's just a simple call to action. And so you can edit them here and do really simple, what I would do is just a sentence about what this is, just so that folks can, folks can most connect with it. I actually need to tweak this a little bit because you can see that these 2 lines are good, but this is a little bit off. So it probably needs to add a little bit more text here to make it resonate for folks. So, or make these lines line up. Okay, so which basically then brings you to the activity section. So these are where anytime you create a post on LinkedIn, do a video on LinkedIn or a carousel post, all of that stuff is going to be featured here. I am constantly experimenting with how frequently to post, all of that kind of stuff. We currently, as I'm recording this, post, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, about 7 times a week. But when I first started, I posted 1 or 2 times a week. I'm honestly just trying to find a cadence that's sustainable for me. So I'm constantly experimenting up and down to see what resonates. And so what I generally, the question really, folks always ask me is, and this was probably a whole other episode that I'll make a note to create, but In terms of what type of post to create, broadly what I would do is share stories and personal experiences related to the products and services that you offer. Again, you want to be aware of privacy and all of that kind of stuff. The second one is I would share like expertise, so like tips or strategies or any of that. And then the other third type is promotional type content. So generally what we have found is promoting an email opt-in tends to do better. Like a free workshop tends to do better than outright like selling a product or service. But I think it's definitely something you can experiment with. Speaking of which, going back to this featured section, I've also seen folks like put if you're advertising for your therapy services, for example, a link to your scheduling link that's in your EHR, that could be a really good call to action here. Could also be like a good call to action right here at the very top of your profile. So to be completely honest, there's these two sections right here, which are experience, projects, recommendations, and I have not focused a lot on this. And to be honest, this is one area that I do need to focus on, which is recommendations. So folks that I've connected with and gotten to know on LinkedIn, I can give recommendations to them, and then I can also get recommendations. The benefit of that is like, it's like social proof, right? So particularly rely on colleagues that you've connected with and built trust with to give recommendations. And then projects, I think this is still something I'm experimenting with, but if you have case studies, or again, be super aware of privacy, but if you're like a course creator or something like that, and you have like case studies and stuff like that, that could be really interesting stuff to put here. And then the skills and education, honestly, I just kind of filled it out, but I haven't quite done like a ton with it. I don't think those are as relevant as the top section here, the about section, the featured section, obviously the content that you create, and then these two sections, the projects and the recommendations. So that's kind of a high level overview. I'm hoping it was actually more than high level. I'm hoping that it was really helpful for you. But that's basically, what I would do to optimize a LinkedIn profile. Again, I try to make this as timeless as possible. So for example, LinkedIn actually has a new feature where you can do multiple banner images. So you can almost like storytell through a banner. I haven't really experimented with that yet, but I know like at least having one banner is better than, most of us may not be at this point where we're trying to create like 5 different banners. So that's why I didn't like include it in this podcast. I hope you found this helpful, and I would love to connect with you here on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to kind of share or see what I'm doing, feel free to, again, follow me on LinkedIn. Within the STC newsletter, which is over at sellingthecouch.com/newsletter, it's our weekly newsletter where I share like the posts that I made, our most recent podcast episode and all that. There's actually a section there that has my updated LinkedIn stats. So you can always see how my posts are performing and all of that. That was a little bit scary to put that out there, but I figured being helpful is the most important thing. All right, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.